Today's date is Tuesday, September the 21st, 2021. My name is Tiffany Rivera, here with Dr. Connie Lester, and I'm interviewing George Oliver III. Mr. Oliver serves as District 4 Commissioner for the City of Ocoee, located in West Orange County, Florida. I am interviewing Commissioner Oliver as part of the Bending Toward Justice Initiative, a RICHES project at the University of Central Florida. The interview is being conducted via Zoom as a precaution due to COVID-19, and Commissioner Oliver has agreed to allow this interview to be recorded. Commissioner, thank you for being here with us today. Would you begin?
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, our pleasure. Would you begin by telling me what life was like for you growing up?
Well, for me, growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, living in an era where there were some exciting things happening in the late 60s and 70s in Atlanta, Georgia, along with some of the dangers that we had to deal with when it comes to the missing and murdered children in Atlanta. I grew up in that era where actually one of my friends, Louis Jeter, was actually one of the kids that was one of the missing and murdered Atlanta children that I knew him. I lived in Southwest Atlanta, and that's where most of the murders were happening, or the kids are coming up missing. And at the same time, it was also exciting because as I can remember, as I recall, growing up in Southwest Atlanta, I didn't even realize I was a minority at the time because everything around me was either Black owned or Black operated. Even when it came down to schooling, from kindergarten, from the time I started school in kindergarten till I graduated school in 12th grade, I never had a Caucasian teacher at all, and not even a faculty member, not even a Caucasian teacher in my school. So growing up in Atlanta public school system, that was the norm for us. So that would be my norm. My point of reference was all Black, everything from the corner gas station to the corner store, to the hardware store, to the grocery store, to the McDonald's, the Church's Chicken, and every other retail establishment around me was all Black owned. Now, my only interaction with the other races would be traveling. I would have to be with my parents going somewhere. I would see them, never having any real conversation or anything like that. But I can see that there's other folks out there, of course, watching television, those kind of things. But as far as interacting, there was no interaction as I grew up until I actually left Atlanta and joined the military. So growing up for me, I would say it was kind of sheltered, but it was also sheltered in a good way because I had access to a lot of civil rights leaders that most people could maybe only dream of having interactions with, or watch a TV documentary, such as I had constant interaction with Maynard Jackson. I had constant interaction with Andrew Young. He would drive down the street and stop and play sandlot football with throw the football around. So I had interaction with Hosea Williams, Ralph Abernathy, Benjamin E. Mays. These were folks that were constantly in my life. These folks, Dr. Joseph Lowry, from the time I can remember going to my first assembly in school, which is probably about the third grade, these folks would come to my school on a regular basis. And it wasn't always time for elections. It was just their duties as civil rights leaders in the community to stop by these schools, elementary schools and high schools, and to talk to the teenagers, to talk to the future, to speak to us about what the future holds, to talk to us about what change meant, to talk to us about if we want to be a part of a change, how to actually take action and be a part of those changes. Now, did I understand everything that they were trying to tell me as I was growing up? Probably not. Most of those things I didn't quite understand it until my adult life. I can always go back and reflect on those conversations, those interactions, seeing them at their just at their grassroots. When you see Hosea Williams walking around the neighborhood holding up a sign saying vote for A. Reginald Eves, and then talking to people, knocking on apartment doors and trying to tell us what he's doing and why he's doing that. I didn't understand it then. But as I got older, I started to understand the seeds that have been planted in me by these folks and these civil rights giants. And I can say that I was very lucky and blessed to be able to have those type of folks around me constantly. Whether on television or where they were walking in my neighborhoods, knocking on my doors, trying to get my parents to vote for them, or just simply throwing a football on the sandlot. Those were some of the impressions, the early impressions that I have in life. I remember one of my teachers, her name is Jessie Goree. She was my sixth grade teacher. Right now, she is the head of the Clayton County School Board. She's the chairman of the school board right now. And those are the kind of people that influenced me constantly throughout my childhood. So when I end up leaving Atlanta, I believe that the seeds have been planted. I was in fertile ground, and I believe that I had a great foundation to start with, even though I didn't realize it myself. And as I continue on, I realized that some of the thoughts and ideas that I had about how things should work, how things should go, things that are right and things that are wrong, were a little bit different from the world around me. You know, especially when it came to interacting with in the Navy, interacting with my Caucasian counterparts or my Latin counterparts or other races. I saw that my thought process was just a little bit different when it comes to right and wrong, and when it comes to standing up for what's right, or just simply being a part of a status quo and going along with the grain. So those are my earliest memories of my childhood, and that was the foundation that they planted in me.
Can you tell me a little bit more about your service in the United States Navy?
Yeah, when I joined the Navy, one of the things that that happened to me in the Navy was I can say that being the first African American commissioner in the city of Ocoee was not my first. I've had many firsts, and joining the Navy was quite an adventure for me, because I started off being a aviation ordnanceman, meaning I would actually fuse bombs and load bombs on aircraft for them to be delivered to different locations in the theater. But I quickly found out when I got there, I didn't want to do that job. That's not something I really I was interested in. I didn't want to do it. And I had a conversation with what we call a command master chief. And I told him that I'm not interested in this job and I really don't want to do this. And his reply to me was, well, you can always fail all your tests and then we'll send you to the fleet. and I took it upon myself at the age of 18 to fail every test that they put in front of me purposely, so that I would go to the fleet. And in my mind, I was going to the fleet to clean toilets and paint the ship. That's all I could do, because I was going as a undesignated airman into a fleet where folks have jobs, where they actually have job designations. I would have had no designation whatsoever. So I think that's one of the things significant about my naval career, is when I got to the ship, I was all prepared in my mind mentally that I was going to be cleaning restrooms, cleaning toilets, cleaning showers, and maybe doing a lot of painting and just cleaning. And that was, my mindset was set that way. However, when I got there in the personnel office with about 100 other sailors, they got there at the same time, and they were all designated, and they were going to the different departments. One guy had my record and said, "Hey, I understand you know how to type." And that's one of the things I learned in high school, how to type and how to work my way around a computer. And I told him, yeah, I can do all that. And I understand how to use a Macintosh computer and how to get in and how to do word processing and those kind of things. And he says, "Hey, go sit in the corner." So I end up sitting in the corner over there for about 2 hours. And I'm like, why has this guy got me sitting in this corner? It doesn't take that long to tell him I need to go clean up a shower or clean up a toilet or clean up a restroom. It doesn't take that long to tell me to do that. So I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden this guy shows up as a older Caucasian male, and all these ribbons on his chest, and he had these 2 stars on and anchors. I'm like, oh my God, who's this guy? And he stood over me and says, "Hey, you're the guy that can type and know how to do word processing?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm him." And he goes, "Hey, follow me." Well, come to find out, he was what's called the command master chief. He was the second highest ranking official aboard that ship besides the captain, the enlisted ranking. I became his personal assistant. And I was the first African-American personal assistant to the command master chief aboard that vessel, the United States ship USS America. And it was a high-profile job where I was a E1, and I have all these high-ranking officials looking up to me to be the voice and the mouthpiece of the command master chief when he's not there. So it was a great responsibility that I took on graciously, and I was able to change my designation with the help of this man. He taught me so many different things. He taught me how to save money. He taught me how to interact with folks. He taught me how to speak up to folks. He taught me how to listen to people, to folks, their complaints, their issues, and to come up with solutions, and just how to really to serve folks. He taught me that, and I spent time with him in Christmas. I spent time with him at Thanksgiving and with his family, as I was, my family wasn't there, and he took me on his wing. And from there, I kind of blossomed and decided that I wanted to become a legalman. So I actually got into the JAG Corps as a result of that. And they sent me to school, did well, came back, and I worked in the legal office. So from the time I did 10 years in the Navy, so all of my duty stations were as either a JAG officer. When there was no JAG officer there, I was it. And if there was a JAG officer, I worked directly for him as kind of like a paralegal, doing court martials and Article 15s, different things, advising the captain as to what he can and cannot do to different folks that come before him for different infragments. So my 10 years was served doing that, and I traveled almost all over the world, just doing that, working for Admiral Board. I worked for admirals. I worked here in Orlando for the captain as a manpower specialist, and also the legal aid as well. So my naval career was very enriched by the folks that was around me and the high profile positions that I had as a result of that.
And I understand that after your service in the Navy that you ended up having a variety of professional experiences in Florida, such as working with the Jacksonville Jaguars, GPS Sports, and Deloitte. What are some of the most proud moments you have from working with these organizations?
You know, it's really funny how God works. I'm a very spiritual person, so I never will withhold the spiritual blessings that I received in life. And again, getting out of the military, it was really funny because I was working with a guy by the name of Chief Swindell. Bruce Swindell was he was a chief I was in a CB battalion. That was my last duty station in Gulfport, Mississippi. And him and I became really good friends because we started doing what's called ADP. It was called ADP security for message traffic. When the Navy started really getting into like encrypting and decrypting messages and those kind of things. So we had to have a security officer in every battalion. So he was the security officer. I was his assistant, as well as the legal officer for the command. And he was a really nice guy. Took me in his wing, and we just really hit it off. And he retired. And when he retired, he moved to Jacksonville. And I was right at my 10-year mark. So I was either going to re-enlist for another 4 or 5 years or get out at that point. But for me, it was going to be re-enlist because another 2 more duty stations, I could have retired with 20 years and been done and moved on to something else. He kept calling me and saying, "Hey, George, come to Jacksonville and come hang out with me." And I'm like, Chief, I really don't want to go drive to Jacksonville. That's like a 6-7 hour drive down I-10. I just got back from deployment. I want to spend time with my family, so I don't want to go to Jacksonville. And he called and said, I understand. Call me back the next week. "Hey, George, why don't you just come, just hang out with me? I'll pay for everything. Just come hang out with me for a day or two." And I'm like, okay, I'll come. So I got in my car on a Friday evening. I drove to Jacksonville, checked in the hotel. And then he gave me an address to meet him the next morning. I met him the next morning. He gave me this address. And I'm sitting in this parking lot near the stadium. And I'm like, and I had this old cell phone, this big brick cell phone. And I called him. I said, "Chief, you gave me the address to this parking lot. I'm near the stadium. And he goes, just stay where you are. He says, where are you? She said, look up, give me the section that you're in. And I gave him the section I was in. He says, I'll be there in a second. And I'm like, what is going on here? So he shows up and on a golf cart. He pops up on a golf cart. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? He goes, this is where I work. And I'm like, you work in a parking lot? He goes, no, I work in that big building at the stadium. So at that time, the Jacksonville Jaguars was not a team. They had just gotten the franchise, and they were retrofitting the stadium for the next year for them to play their inaugural season. And he invited me in, and I'm looking around like, oh my God, this huge, massive office. He was the chief information officer for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, long story short, come to find out, he's married to Wayne Weaver, the owner's daughter. Did not know this. He's married to the owner's daughter. And he says, George, he took me around and showed me the stadium and offered me a job. And he offered me a job, gave me some figures what he was going to pay me. And the rest was history. I ended up taking the job eventually, moved the family to Jacksonville. And I was recruited by Microsoft as well as Bank of America away from Jacksonville to work these stored value cards as well as to do some other different things. I took a job with Microsoft, moved to Orlando. My wife is from here, so we ended up moving back to Orlando. She loved that. And I started working for Microsoft. I was traveling all over the state of Florida teaching desktop publications to just about every company out there in the state of Florida, government contractors, military bases, private industries. And I did that for a couple of years until I was recruited out of there by Cardinal Health. I did a private training for some Cardinal Health executives, and they recruited me from Microsoft to work for Cardinal Health as a project manager, working in the healthcare industry. And the cool thing about that job was we did drug dispensing and automation throughout hospitals all over the United States. We own 93% of the whole entire market. My job was the state of Florida. I've been in every hospital in the state of Florida as long as has not been built in the last 2 years. No, 5 years. I've been in just about every hospital, every nook and cranny of those hospitals. And we got to program robots that dispense medications to machines that nurses will dispense drugs to patients. And I work with pharmacists, and I work with the CEOs, the CFOs. I work with the nurses, the chief nursing officers on how to actually move these medications from the pharmacy to the floors that would allow them to dispense them out to patients. So I did that for 10 years. And that was part of my corporate life. And then when the market crashed, the housing market crashed, I found myself trying to figure out what do I need to do now. It's 2008. And guess what? I never had a degree through all that. I never had one college degree through all of that. And I think that was a part of the blessing because of the foundation that had been laid before me. So when I got to 2008, I had to figure out, well, what am I going to do? This is what, let's go to school. And from there, from 2008 all the way up until 2015, I earned 4 degrees. And it was amazing. And I also became a contractor, started doing contract work for Deloitte. And from there, ended up with Deloitte. I tried to leave last year when the pandemic hit. I tried to leave and I turned my resignation in, and they says, well, we'll just put you on a contract basis and let's let you do some contract work. So between working in the contracts on the weekend doing audits and different things like that for them, I worked as a Orange County public school teacher, teaching middle school kids business technology at Horizon West Middle School. I did that for 1 year. And then we came up with the mask issue. So I ended up leaving Orange County Public Schools because of my motto was going to be no mask, no me. And a lot of the kids were opting out for masks, and it became really dangerous to become a teacher where you have no control. So I had control last year because I had kids doing launch ed. I had kids in the classroom, and I could make them wear their mask and do the social distancing. But this year, the climate is a little different in the school system because a lot of the parents don't want their kids to wear masks. And a lot of teachers are getting sick with COVID as a result of that. So I opted out to not to go back as a result of that. And then my company called me back and said, hey, we need to put you back on the road. So now I'm back on the
So it kind of
road with
worked
my wife.
out. So what led or brought you specifically to the city of Ocoee?
That is a very interesting idea what happened. And it goes all the way back to Atlanta. And in 2001, my wife and I, we have 5 boys. Our family was growing, and we lived in a house in Orlando, and we just simply outgrown the house. And so we had to start looking around, trying to find somewhere to go. And we ended up looking in Ocoee. We found Ocoee, and it had everything we were looking for in a home. The price point was right, everything we were getting. And we put a deposit down in a home in Ocoee. And then we started learning about the Ocoee Massacre as a result of telling my wife, my father-in-law, and I told my wife's uncle, hey, we're going to move to Ocoee. And that's when I started learning about Ocoee. I started learning about the history of Ocoee, and they were telling me that they would not come visit me at all because of the stigmatism that they're still dealing with as older, mature adults right now. And so as I learned about it, my wife and I made a decision. We're not going to move to Ocoee. So we went to the same builder, which is U.S. Homes, and asked them, did they have any other city that they're building in the Central Florida area? And we were told to go look in Maitland. And we found the same model home with almost the same amenities in Maitland. So we switched our deposit from Ocoee to Maitland, and we started building a house in Maitland. And I don't know, I really cannot tell you what happened between them building that house in Maitland and moving back to Ocoee. But I do remember one thing. I remember having a conversation with my wife about change. And I told her, I said that I was always taught that if you want something to change, you have to be a part of it. And I told her that by us running away from Ocoee and its history, that we will never be a part of that change. And it may not never happen until folks like us that look like us start to move there and live there, pay taxes there, raise our children there. That's the only way that we're going to start seeing that change. And her response at that time was, well, send me a letter from Ocoee because I'm not moving to Ocoee. And I'm like, well, I guess that does it. We're not moving to Ocoee. But a few weeks later, we were having another conversation, and I don't know if she was had other conversations outside of ours, and it came back up again. And I said, well, I've always taught to be a part of a change, and I really feel in my heart of hearts that we need to be a part of a change. I said, only thing we have to do is move there, pay taxes, and enroll our kids in school, and we will be a part of that change in that community. That's all we need to do. Well, we did. She agreed, and in 2002, June of 2002, we ended up moving to Ocoee. The house that we were building had not had a buyer, so we transferred their deposit back over to that house, and we closed on that house. And we moved to Ocoee, and we registered our kids in school, and we went about our lives. And politics was never a thing that we talked about, that we never got into. But I did notice that the community was looking very diverse. I mean, every time someone moved in, it was very diverse. From my neighbor across the street from Chicago, older guy from Chicago, and his wife was from Puerto Rico. My next door neighbor was from Jamaica, but had a Philippine heritage, but they were from Jamaica. And it was just so diverse. And in my community, I was really proud to be there, be a part of that. And we could see the change within the community. But looking outside the community as a whole, we didn't see the bigger picture that it was changing, just like my community was changing and morphing into this big melting pot. The entire community at large was doing the same thing at the same time. So, and that's how I got to Ocoee.
And why did you run for public office?
I knew that's going to be your next question. So, living in Ocoee, and I was still traveling quite a bit with Deloitte. I remember in 2015, it was late 2014, sitting at Rustique in Ocoee with, at that time, Representative Bracy. We were just having lunch, just a routine lunch that we were having, talking about whatever. And somehow I jumped on my soapbox about taxes and the city not growing fast enough. And it took us forever to get rid of this big eyesore. We had like a 15-story building that we had there that was across the street from where we were. And I said, you remember that building across the street? He said, yeah, it was there forever. I said, it took us forever to get rid of that building. I don't understand why they move so slow here in this city. And I think that politicians should have a sense of urgency. And we just got jumping that soapbox. And he said, you know what? You should run for office. And I'm like, no, I don't want to run for office. This is you and I talking. And I went back and told my wife, and she said, you should. And I'm like, no. And she says, really, you really should. You come this far, so why not go a little further? And by January, I think the last day to file as a candidate was on a Friday, and I registered on a Wednesday, and it was just me and the incumbent, and I remember running this race, going in and running the race and everything, and it was really fun. I remember going out, knocking on doors, developing my platform, speaking to folks, trying to figure out what they needed, what they wanted, and what they wanted to see in the city. And I quickly found out that I think I might have found my calling, because I was always reaching back to what has been told to me by my mentors, by all these folks that have been in my life all this time, and I can hear them, their voices echo over my shoulder as I spoke to people, as I listened to them, as I shook their hands, as I let them know that, hey, I want to work for you. I want to do the best job I can to make your life better in this city. So we did that in 2015, and we ran for office and everything, and it came to election day. And I remember election day, standing there next to my opponent inside this building in the Jim Beach Rec Center, inside this door, and my campaign manager sitting in the corner, and we're waiting on the results to come out. And I had Miss LaVon Bracy was downtown, and she was giving me the counts, and she was texting me, and she texted me. She said, "George, you're down by 40 in the you're down by 40 with the mail-in ballots." And I'm like, okay, a little nervous. The results came out, but I beat him. I beat him by 60 votes, but I still lost by 20 votes because of the absentee ballots. So I lost by 20 votes, and I told him that he won, and he was relieved. And I remember having a conversation with the incumbent. I told him, I said, you know what? I said, I had a lot of fun doing this. This was great. I said, I'll tell you what, if you would actually look at some of the things that I had on my agenda as far as my platform is concerned, if you can get at least one of those things done in the next 3 years, you'll never have to worry about seeing me again. Matter of fact, I'll work with you. And he shook my hand and told me yes. Well, at the end of 3 years, none of that stuff was done, and nothing happened. And so in 2018, I came back. And as a result of that election, we won. But there was a replay in that election. It was almost the same scenario, where my same campaign manager sitting in the same corner. We're waiting in 2018, almost a repeat. It was like deja vu. And I got a text message from Mrs. Bracy, and she told me I was down by 45. And I'm like, what is going on here? Put all this work in. And then she goes, 3 minutes, no, actually less than 3 minutes later, she texted me again and said, I made a mistake. You're down by 50. But when the results came in from the polls, not only did we make up the 50, but we actually beat them by another 45 votes. So that's when we won the election. And I told him this time, I said, I beat you this time. And now it's time to get to work. So we've been working ever since. We've been trying to change the narrative of what politics, not only in the city of Ocoee, but in Central Florida, should look like. Sometimes it's not popular. Sometimes it's very unpopular, a very unpopular stance you have to take, even when it deals with the status quo of politicians throughout Central Florida. So we're redefining those things. Case in point, we're trying to get a light on the corner of Ingham Road and Cloud Corner Ocoee Road. I went and met with the Orange County mayor, and got their support, which a lot of folks in politics in Ocoee didn't like me, they didn't want me to do that. That goes against how they operate. Well, if they're the keeper of the gate, why don't you just go to them and ask them for what you want? And they agreed. They actually agreed to put the light up. And then throughout this whole ordeal, I still kept in contact with them, say, give me updates, what's going on. And unfortunately, the politicians in Ocoee is not used to that. Not only that, but the staff and the leadership, they didn't like the way I operated, even to the point where when I thought things were going slow, I went to the county and I went to their meeting and I stood there and said, hey, when are we going to get our light? Why is it taking so long? There should be more of a sense of urgency. And I'm talking to our county mayor and our city and our county commissioners. So again, I think we have to be able to do things differently. We can't always operate the same way that we've operated in the past if we want a different result. Again, we know that that saying about insanity, and I truly believe that. So, in order for us to get something different in the city of Ocoee, to move us in a different direction, we have to think differently, and we also have to be able to move and operate and forge partnerships differently from the way we did them in the past.
Well, with that in mind, Commissioner Oliver, what does it mean to you to be the first African-American commissioner in the city of Ocoee?
You know what? I thought about that this morning. And I'll tell you this. They always say first is best. Not in every case. First is not always going to be the best. First sometimes means you're going to be the first one through the door. You're going to be the first one to take all the darts. You're going to take the darts, you're going to take the bullets, you're going to take the blows, you're going to take everything for everybody that comes behind you, you're going to take them for them. And how you take them, it boils down to how you move and operate in this position. So me being the first, I'm not going to say that it was easy. I'm not going to say that I will not sugarcoat it and tell you that, oh, it's the greatest thing since the hot dog. No, I took a lot of bullets and I'm still taking them to this day. Being my second term around, being reelected this year, 6 months ago, overwhelmingly being reelected, I'm still taking darts for those that's going to follow me in my footsteps in this particular position. So it is bittersweet. It's thrilling to take home the victory, but the work that comes behind it and the things that you have to deal with, the political ideologies that you have to deal with behind it, it's a price to pay. You're going to pay a price. And that's the price that I'm willing to pay. And don't get me wrong. Will I do this again? Knowing what I know, without hesitation, I will continue to do this over and over and over again. I'll take the same darts every single time, as long as I know that I'm making it safe for the person coming behind me. I'm making it a little better. I'm leaving this place better than I got here. It makes it all worth it, especially when you're in the grocery stores or walking down the street in Walmart or wherever you are, and people stop you and tell you about something that you did that might have helped their community, or even just planting flowers, or just giving them money to do something, repave their sidewalks, whatever it may be. No matter how little it, no matter how much small it may be, or how large it may be, I get a lot of gratitude out of helping folks. So being the first for me means taking those darts and being able to stand up and take it so that someone else can follow in the footsteps, blaze that trail, so that the path that someone else comes behind me will be paved out for them, and they will understand what I went through, but know how to maneuver and to get things done in this particular position.
Speaking of getting things done, you facilitated and helped to implement the Ocoee Massacre Proclamation. Can you tell me about that process and the significance of it?
I can say that as we worked to get the proclamation done, when I came in office, March of 2018, there was no sign of a proclamation or apology or anything that was going to happen. And that was because the mayor had already planted his feet in the ground and said, I'm not apologizing for that. I had nothing to do with that. And regardless of whatever happens, we will not be putting forth any type of proclamation or apology during the 100-year. We're going to recognize it, but we're not going to apologize for it. So taking that in mind, keeping that in mind, I had to really think about how do I approach this. So what I did was I gave the entire Human Rights and Diversity Board an ultimatum. I went to one of the meetings. I said, "This is what we're now in April, and I wasn't even 1 month in yet." I said, you know what? I give you 30 days to come up with a draft of a proclamation apologizing for the Ocoee Massacre, signed by our mayor. If you don't do it, I will hire a private company to work with me to come up with a proclamation, and we will present it to the city commission. If the mayor won't sign it, I will. So we went forward 30 days later, there was still no proclamation. I hired a company by the name of White and Associates. And we sat down with their writers and we started carving out a proclamation. What does it mean? How do we put this in a manner that not only is it going to be an apology for what happened in the past, but also how do we take what we've learned and move forward in the future? How do we look at our city? How do we take what's called a sundown town and transform it into a sunrise city through the words of this proclamation? And we came up with some wonderful words. And as I took the draft of that proclamation, I made the city pay for it. I told them if they wouldn't pay for it, I'm going to take the credit card they gave me, and I'm going to pay them with the credit card. He's going to go, "You're going to pay for this proclamation to be done." And Commissioner Brinson had drafted one as well. And miraculously, out of the clear blue, the Human Rights and Diversity Board came up with the proclamation as well themselves. It just popped up. So we had 3 proclamations, and the weird thing about it was they almost all said the same thing. They were almost identical to one another. So we took the 3, we combined it to make one proclamation, and we presented it November. It was November 2nd of 2019. We presented it a year before the 100-year and centennial, 100-year memorial service. But the only thing that I hate about it, because the politics that went behind it, was the fact that the mayor still has never read it out loud. Even though his signature is on the proclamation, he's never read it out loud in public. He refuses to read it, and he really does not acknowledge the apology portion of the proclamation. And to this day, he's been verbal about it and vocal, saying that he will never apologize for that because he had nothing to do with it, and it wasn't, no one in his family. Or so I think that he just kind of taken the wrong approach. So that's kind of the way where him and I kind of split hairs as it pertains to the leadership team. And since then, I think that, I know he's resented me for that. He's resented me for taking a stance when it comes to that proclamation. And even further, after the proclamation was actually signed and it was actually ratified, and it became a part of our records, official records. A year later, the mayor, at the 100-year celebration, we were going to have, according to the proclamation, it states that the first week in November will always be dedicated to the memory of the Ocoee Massacre. The first week in November. Well, unfortunately, the following year, which is 2020, the mayor decided that he wanted to hold the Founders Day celebration, which is a country western music festival, honoring the founders of Ocoee, the same week of the Ocoee Massacre. And that's where we really had a problem. And I really had to rally folks and fight that does not happen. I was outvoted 2-3. Myself, Commissioner Brinson, voted to have it. The only thing the ask was, please do not have a Founders Day celebration right next to a memorial service when you know that some of the founders was a part of the Ocoee Massacre. So that is, you're really simply stepping and spitting on the graves of those folks that lost their lives, their livelihoods, their property, and then you're going to have a country western festival right next to it. And I simply ask that you move it to another date, move it into another month, move it anywhere. You got 12, you got 11 months that you can use, but the mayor was able to rally up the folks. He rallied 3 votes himself to say, we're going to keep it there, and we are going to hold the music festival, no, called the Founders Day Festival, one day after you memorialize the memorial that he's not going to apologize for. And he stuck to his guns. But you know what, though? I'm a strong believer in God. I believe that God knows all things and can handle all things very well, because COVID hit. And he was forced not only to change the name of the music festival to Ocoee Music Festival, but he was also forced to cancel it. He had to cancel it because of COVID as it came around. So there was no music festival, but we still had the Ocoee Massacre memorialization. So a lot of politics goes into things. And when you have someone like our mayor who only has 1 vote, he's not a strong mayor. He is just a 1 vote like myself. And we have a strong city manager form of government. But when you have someone that's been around for almost 40 years in politics in the city, there's a lot of social power that goes along with that staying power. So with him being around almost 40 years in the city of Ocoee in politics, so he has a very large social following, and it's hard to maneuver sometimes in the system when you have the mayor and he knows he has 3 votes. So that means that the city manager and everybody else around him know he has 3 votes. So therefore, he has the power to say, you know what, city manager, I think it's time for you to leave. I got the 3 votes to get you out of here, to my 2 votes. So the politics that we deal with, not only around the proclamation, but just the everyday politics that we deal with here, goes to show that we're still dealing with 50-year-old ideologies. We're still dealing with ideology from the 50s and 60s that we deal with every single day, even though we have one of the most diverse cities in Central Florida. But when you have certain people that are still in power, they can still wheel things and bend things to their will because of that. And it's not until the folks in Ocoee realize that we are a majority. We have a diverse majority. And once they realize that, then you can empower them to make the change through their vote.
So what do you see as the most important takeaway of the 100th commemoration?
The most important takeaway for me will be the fact that we have a city that recognizes that it happened. Something happened in Ocoee in 1920. We recognize that the folks lost their lives. We recognize that they lost their property. We recognize that they lost their livelihoods in 1920. And we also recognize that there's no way to give any of that back. None of that can ever be given back, not even to the descendants. The land has been bought and sold so many different times, there's no way that you'll be able to give it back. So we recognize all these things, but we also recognize something that's more important than all that. We recognize the fact that we as a community are coming together despite the status quo, despite what, despite the small numbers of folks that want Ocoee to stay the same, that we as a community at large realize that those things happen. We recognize them and we'll never forget them. We will continue to memorialize them, and we will continue to educate not only our children through Governor DeSantis signing the bill saying that the Ocoee Massacre can be taught into all public school systems throughout the state of Florida. Despite that, it seems to me it's more like an oxymoron, because then he turned around and it says that, well, you know what, race-based theory, you're not going to teach that in the systems, in our school systems, but you let the Ocoee Massacre to be taught in all school systems. So now the takeaway is that we have come together as a community, that we're being recognized throughout the state of Florida as a community of being a diverse community, but also to being a sunrise city. So we're seeing that the old stigmatism of the sundown town of Ocoee they're being washed away every single day. Every day that I walk into Publix and I see diverse folks working in there, having conversations. And I go out and watch the Little League football games, and these kids are out there not worried about what color you are, that you're my classmate, you're my friend, you're my teammate, and we're all out in restaurants, having dinner together, and just living together as a community. It makes me proud, and it makes me so happy, and I get emotional when I think about it. I get emotional because we are actually moving the dial. We're moving the dial, and I think that the folks that perished in Ocoee, if they could see where we are now, probably wouldn't believe it. So we are slowly being recognized as a sunrise city, and I have garnered the hashtag One Ocoee. So we are One Ocoee. We are the sunrise city of Ocoee, and we are One Ocoee. That is what I'm most proud about the Ocoee Massacre and what it has done. The memorialization of that has done for our city thus far.
And what do you see in the city of Ocoee's future?
I see the leadership in our city reflecting the diversity in our city. I see our first African-American female commissioner. I see our first Hispanic female commissioner. I see our first Hispanic. I see our first Asian. I see so many firsts for us when it comes to the leadership roles. Our city manager positions, city planners, our assistant city managers, our public works director. Even right now, we got our first female police chief. I see those things happening. Our first African-American deputy chief of police. I see our first female public, I think, utilities director, female. So I see so many things that's going to reflect our diversity in our leadership. That's what I see for the city. I see young professionals moving to Ocoee. I see us transforming our downtown. I see a community that folks are going to look at, and we're going to become the model throughout the state of Florida of how do you go from a sundown town to a sunrise city.
Commissioner, with the centennial of the Rosewood Massacre coming up in 2023, what do you expect to see come out of that in relation to what you've spoken about for Ocoee?
You know, I expect to see that there's going to be a lot of parallels from that story to our story. There's going to be a lot of parallels in journalism when it comes to the 100-year celebration of Rosewood. And I think that one of the big things about Rosewood, I think there was a lot of documentation as to what happened with those guys in 1922. And I think that what I would see is I see that not only that's going to be a lot of parallel stories about it, but I believe that there's going to be even more education about what happened in Rosewood, how it happened, why it happened, and also I think it's going to be awakening, a nationwide awakening as to it happening in a small town called Rosewood in Florida, but it happened all over this nation. This is a story that has been told, it has been put on the silver screen, and I believe that when they hit the 100-year mark, they're going to take that story and they're going to memorialize it all over this country. I think there's going to be a big push, not only just in the state of Florida, and I believe that they've been working hard in I think it's Sumter County to get that story out and to make it more of a nationwide story that helps us all to understand that it just didn't happen here. This is something that has happened all over our nation, and that we need to recognize as a nation that, yeah, we have a gloomy past when it comes to those things, but we also have a bright future ahead of us. Once we were able to, I think George Santiago said that a people that don't know their history is doomed to repeat it. And I believe that sometimes we repeat history when we don't recognize it and we don't educate folks. We repeat it in different ways. Look at Black Lives Matter. I think that's just a repeat of the civil rights movement. We repeat so many different things because I believe that our children, a lot of our children today, don't quite understand, have not been taught what happened in the 60s, what happened in the 50s and the 60s, what was Jim Crow all about, what was Reconstruction all about. They haven't been taught these things and they don't understand it. So now we repeat so many of these things, but we do it in a more modern way. And it's the same thing. And I heard what young gentleman say, older gentleman say to me. He said, the stuff that's going on around us is just a repeat to me. He says, I think he was somewhere in his late 70s. He said, a lot of stuff that you see, from fashion to movements to folks being killed by the police, he said, this is just a rerun to me. And it dawned on me that we're not teaching this to our children at an early age, and we should be. So I think that Rosewood is going to take that, the Rosewood Centennial, they're going to take the opportunity to educate the nation about what happened there in order for us to never, ever repeat it in any shape, form, or fashion.
Is there anything else that you would like to add or expand as we begin to wrap up your interview today?
Not really. I think that what I will say is that in order for anything to change, you have to be a part of that change, but you also have to understand that it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard, and there's going to be a price to pay. And you have to ask yourself, whether you're working in corporate America, or you're working in academia, or private industry, or whatever you work in, the healthcare industry, whatever industry you work in, or you move or you operate in, and if you want to see a change in that industry, someone has to step up. Someone's going to have to take those darts coming through the door, and you got to be brave enough to have the integrity to hold to to hold true to your belief, regardless of how unpopular it may be. But you have to remember that if you answer to a higher power, which is for me, I can only speak for myself, I answer to God and God only. So no man, I fear no man and their agendas and what they try to do, because God is only going to allow them to do whatever he allows them to do to you. But I believe that it also will serve a higher, there's going to be a higher reasoning or a higher purpose. Everything has a purpose, and regardless how it happens, I think if we stick to our guns and realize that there's a higher purpose in everything, regardless of how it happens, just stick with it, go with it, believe in God, believe in yourself, believe in what He's given you, believe in all the things that He planted in you from an early age, and muster it up and move forward with it. Don't look back, just always move forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Oliver, for your time today here with us, the University of Central Florida Riches Project team. We really appreciate it, and we will be sure to send you a copy of today's interview so that you have it for your reference. So thank you.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate you being able to kind of shift or maneuver your schedules a little bit from last week. I appreciate that. But again, I'm here if you need me for anything. And thanks again.